We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180, 1230 KGEO, 1410 KERI, and also now in Albuquerque, New Mexico on 1000 KKIM. We are honored to have as our guest by phone Bruce Herschensohn, former senatorial candidate, senior fellow at Pepperdine University, and author of a great book I highly recommend, Obama's Globe, A President's Abandonment of U.S. Allies and the World. So, Bruce, before the break, I asked you, are we looking at a scenario kind of like happened in World War I, where if we go into Syria, one thing may lead to another, Israel could be attacked, all of a sudden now we have to defend Israel. Are we looking at a scenario where all the dominoes may come into effect? We may even have World War III.
There is risk in every time there is a military action. There is always risk. You have to take it, as you mentioned JFK in Cuba. In the speech that he gave to the nation in 1962 regarding what he was doing, he was saying that there is always risk, but the greatest risk of all would be to do nothing. And in mentioning JFK in Cuba, I think it's much more like that than anything else. The president acted on his own. He didn't tell anybody. He just did it. Then he just told the nation, told the Congress and the nation just about the same day, because he didn't want leaks. President Reagan didn't tell anybody about Grenada. Margaret Thatcher got mad as the devil at him. They were great friends, but his answer was first an apology for not really giving her a real advance on this thing. But he didn't want to tell anyone because he didn't want leaks. That's the way you harm yourself. And this guy, the president of the United States right now, President Obama, is giving so much time, so much information to the enemy that it is terribly. I've never seen anything quite like it. When you say how wars start, also, let me just tell you, we just saw how things started with the Arab Spring that everybody celebrated. What started the Arab Spring was a guy who you have to feel tremendous sympathy and empathy for. He burned himself to death because economically he just couldn't get along anymore in Tunisia. He had a vegetable cart, and a policeman knocked it over and said he didn't have a permit, and he burned himself to death. And that's what started a riot in Tunisia, which spread to Egypt. It spread all over the Arab world. Not all over yet, but into many countries of the Arab world. And our President Obama, sympathized so much with him that he said that Ben Ali, a friend of the United States, has to get out. Well, Ben Ali got out, but by the same, and we got something worse in. But in the doing of that, it was the start of the Arab Spring, which has worked out terribly, certainly terribly for the United States, terribly for the Arab people.
You know, thank you for that. Yeah. What I see right now is this is just another diversion tactic by Obama to take away from the situations that took place in Benghazi, the IRS scandals that are taking place, the amnesty situation, our borders, and also our problems with the Muslim Brotherhood. Mm-hmm. These are the things that are important right now to me, more than going overseas to someone that has no war with America and has never threatened America.
Mm-hmm. Well, I understand almost how everyone feels on this, and I certainly understand how you do. But no, it isn't. This is terribly important because it's going to set the precedent for future presidents. There are going to be future enemies. We may have a great president, and I certainly hope that we do someday. I want him to be commander-in-chief. I don't want the enemies to say, look, the American presidency is impotent. This guy can't move. Look what Obama did in 2013. You now have to go to the Congress. We have to influence 535 people, and frankly, that's much easier than influencing a president of the United States who has the constitutional authority to do this. I don't want that. Don't stop what we have. We have had some marvelous presidents, and in having them, they have been very, very careful not to ever give the impression that they need to ask authority. he is giving the impression. He may say, well, I know I have the authority, but I want to do this. No, you don't do that. Even when a president has done what he well knows, what he really well knows, is in keeping with the War Powers Act, he will not only not say that he's doing it, he'll be very, very careful to say that he has there are particular words that presidents have used since that time. He will never say that that he's acting in accord with the War Powers Act. He may say, I have taken note of it, but he'll never say that he's doing it in accord or because that it's something that he is been granted the authority to do by the Congress. They've been very careful. President Obama is not careful. He's not thinking of the future, of future presidents, and that's why I don't want this done. Of course I want it. Good Lord, do I want to know about Benghazi. And of course this takes away from it, and I recognize that. But by the same token, I don't want to mess things up for a future president of the United States. I'll even go along with the gag of saying yes to the authorization by the Congress because of the fact that he already has the authorization without the Congress.
Insane. Our guest by phone, former senatorial candidate, senior fellow, author, professor, Bruce Herschensohn. Bruce, I was watching an interview with Donald Rumsfeld the other night, and he called President Obama the worst president in his lifetime. Mm-hmm. And he made two comments that I had to agree with. You know, after the Benghazi incident, he was playing cards in Vegas. And after he made the announcement about Syria the other day, he went out on a golf date. I mean, it just...
No, I know.
I
do know. He is the worst president in not just... I mean, because of straight up policy, he's the worst president in my lifetime.
Well, even going back to Clay's lifetime, which is around Lincoln or Buchanan, so.
Yeah, he is. The second worst would be Carter.
Yeah.
Because he also abandoned friends of the United States consistently.
Well, what message are we sending, though? If, again, playing the advocate on this, what message are we sending to Iran and North Korea and Syria if we don't do anything, and it's starting to look like we may not?
Oh, I think it's terrible. We got to do something. We've got to. The second that the president talked about a red line, he had to do something when the red line was crossed, but he didn't. When a president gives a threat, you better do it. And again, in your bringing up of President Kennedy, by God, he did everything that he said he was going to do immediately. No chance for leaks, no chance for the enemy to do whatever the devil they wanted to do. By the enemy, I don't mean Cuba, I mean Soviet Union, which is exactly the way that the president put it. That the difficulties are not in Cuba; they come from Moscow. But in the doing of it, he left no room, and you can't leave room. A president cannot leave room.
Well, I disagree with you a little bit, Bruce. I don't think we should do anything, number one.
Wow,
I'm surprised at that, Clay.
Yeah, I do. Well, they haven't attacked us. They haven't threatened us. We've never gone after anybody that hasn't done anything against the United States.
Well, let me finish.
Let me finish my thought.
I know that we're both on the same wavelength in the broad political length. I'm a conservative, you're a conservative, all of that. But yet you're saying this. I'm not so sure you would have said this if it was Reagan. I'm not so sure that you would have said this before Rand Paul, who I think is one of the most dangerous people on the horizon. I believe that it came with the Tea Party, which was marvelous. I totally supported all the way. When they were engaged in an election that was an off-year election, and so they talked totally about economics. None of them talked about foreign policy except one guy, Rand Paul. When they finally became the victors in that election, the off-year election, they went on to do exactly the same thing in the presidential election, talk about economics, because none of them knew anything, and I don't blame anyone for what they know or what they don't know about foreign policy, but when they were in a presidential election, you better be talking foreign policy. One guy was, and it was Rand Paul. So they sort of looked to him because he was one of them, and he seemed to know his stuff. And so everyone started going along with him. I saw it happening in the Congress. And when they did this, it has done something terribly damaging to the Republican Party. We now have an isolationist wing, as the Republicans had before World War II. Not after the attack at Pearl Harbor, but before it. An isolationist wing which really, in contemporary times, has belonged to the Democrats. In 1972, McGovern's slogan, "Come Home, America." And now we have that here. When I heard Rand Paul say, James Clapper lied and Edward Snowden told the truth, that said everything. That said everything. Of course James Clapper lied. He's the Director of National Intelligence. You don't expect the Director of National Intelligence to tell the world something. He's going to lie. That's part of the job.
The president does.
Pardon?
The president does.
Well, I don't want to get into that. I mean, I'm trying to make a point on isolationism. Presidents have lied periodically. Generally, I think they have been very valid in lying. Ike, I got to get into it because you mentioned it. Ike lied about the U-2. He didn't want to tell Khrushchev that we had a spy plane. He was caught and he admitted it. Kennedy lied about the Bay of Pigs. He said it wasn't the CIA that was involved. He was caught and he admitted it. There are times when I understand in totality why presidents have in the past lied. But that's beside the point. I'm worried about the future of American politics. If we have both parties now engaged with a heavy isolationist wing, they're going to win the election. And someday we're going to be not only just like every other country, we're going to be worse than some.
You know, Bruce, I can't think of another issue that the three of us would be across the board, and we are. I think we've got you on one end, Clay on the other, and me in the middle. And
okay.
I can't think of an issue that the three of us would not agree on.
It's cross-partisanship.
Yeah.
This whole issue has. But, boy, we have been so... Let me just maybe make one argument on the side that I'm on. We have been the most magnificent power post-war, magnificent power. We're like what we used to watch when we were kids, the Western movies where the cavalry was coming with the bugle sounding and all of the innocent people were going to be saved. That's how people across the world looked at the United States. If things got too bad, the U.S. would be there and be their savior. No other country would do that. We did, and I think this is the most noble thing ever done in world history. We became the only nation that would give lives for the freedom of a stranger. And by God, we did it, and I think that is what has made the United States the greatest nation in the world. We want to give it up. We want to be so libertarian, so selfish, that all we care about is us.
Yep.
That isn't the USA that I knew all my life.
And we're in total agreement there. Bruce, unfortunately, I should have seen if we could keep you for the hour, unfortunately.
No.
But we would love to have you come back when this kind of sorts itself out in the next couple of months.
And let it be known that this is Wednesday. We're taping this on the 4th.
Yeah, that's important because
Yes.
God knows what's going to happen in the next few minutes, let alone days.
Yeah. Bruce, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the time. And I'm going to see you on a Thursday night at your roundtable discussion.
Terrific.
Thank you, Bruce.
I'm delighted.
We'll be back in 60 seconds on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.
Thank you.